Hi there. I wanted to take some time and go through the setup we're going to use here in my high school at FVL for in-classroom video recording and streaming and audio recording and streaming to allow mostly for hybrid teaching during this time if students are going to be at home, but also participating with class in a pretty much live environment. So I'll go through all the different components, kind of a general overview, and some of the functionality and features we're hoping to be able to use, and then I'll go into a little bit more of the technical details if you're interested in that. I'll also share links to all of the different components we're using and where I found and access them and acquired them from, in case you're looking to get any of them yourself. So one of the first things you might notice is that there is some delay with the video from the audio, and that is mostly because of what the signal path is. We're using an IP camera, so it's going through the network, so there's some processing delay. So you can see here, if I do a clap, here's the clap, then there's definitely a substantial delay. It's not really intended to replace like a live webcam that someone might use for a video conference, but more just in classroom showing what's going on. So I think for that purpose, it's still going to be quite usable. But if someone was going to do like a Zoom conference with just a one-to-one or in front of a computer, I should say, then just using a webcam is still probably going to be the better way to go for that. But I'm going to go through the different components we're using here. So let me switch my camera here and kind of show you. I'll come back and show this in more detail. But using OBS Studio on the computer that is processing the video and doing the recording right now, and it'll do the streaming. The main camera is a Amcrest PoE PTZ camera. So it is hooked up into our network, into a PoE port mounted on the ceiling. Got this on a 16-inch drop there to get it a little bit down off of the ceiling. And I've got it towards the front of the room, about where the distance back from where the projector is mounted. The idea being to get mostly the view of the front of the room, but not really get any students in the view. So at the most, in most of our classrooms, I think we'll maybe get backs of heads of some of the very front students, but most of the time it should be controlled that it will only be getting the front and the teacher and the whiteboard. Also, what I'm using for recording right now is a microphone, a wireless microphone. Just purchased this off of Amazon. It's a nice little system, it seems like. It has a receiver that plugs into the back, just in the audio input of the computer, and then a little transmitter. I'm just having my pocket here. And it's got 3 different microphone capsule options, so allows for like a around the neck or a head-worn microphone, as well as just a little one that can be stuck in the top to be like a handheld version. I'm using a clip-on lapel right now. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell, but it is possible through OBS Studio that I can turn the volume on inside the classroom. Test 1, 2. So this will also serve as in-classroom amplification for teachers. So especially if they're using a mask when they're teaching, that should allow for a little bit better reception or audio quality for the classroom without them straining their voices. Not sure if that's coming across on the video recording here, but I'm going to turn that off for myself right now. So then just to show you some of the different views that can be set up and used in OBS Studio. So you're looking at this is just the camera feed right now. I do have, it is a PTZ camera, meaning that I can set some presets. So I'll just show you quickly here. This is the web interface for the camera itself. So the camera is an IP camera. It's got a web address that you can go to, whatever you set it up on your network. And then I can set different presets. So if I go to, say, preset 2, that'll move to a view of the whiteboard here. Preset 3 is going to zoom in a little bit closer to the whiteboard. Let me switch back over to what I'm actually recording here, or what would actually be streamed. So it's a digital zoom, so the zoom is going to give only so much. But I think it's going to give a decent view of the whiteboard in the classroom. Teacher can decide how much they want to show or what they're going to show in. As far as displaying what would be on the screen inside the classroom, that would be mixed in directly with OBS Studio. Through the web interface, you can set those presets and move those around and recall those presets. There is also an app for Android and iOS that you can install from Amcrest that allows you to control cameras. That's a level of complexity I wouldn't expect a lot of teachers to necessarily be interested in using. I would think the majority of teachers are going to maybe have a single view or that the camera is set at, and they're just going to go to it when they want to use that, but not do a lot of moving or switching in between. But that'll be somewhat up to teachers to decide what they're interested in doing themselves. Just giving them options and the ability to do things. So other views, for instance, so if we have, I'll just show, like here's a split screen kind of option where we still got a camera view for where I'm standing right now, but that could be moved around. And then whatever would be displayed on the projection inside the classroom on the screen. So if the teacher wants to be able to have both of those going, also just going to a full screen view of what is on the screen inside the classroom. That also can be used, obviously, as it's being taught with the voiceover over the top of it. I'm going to switch over here to my main display. And I'll get a little bit of infinity look here, but just to show you some of the features of OBS Studio, if you've never used OBS Studio, and what you can do kind of to set things up. So over here on the left, you have the different scenes that you can set up. So like here's that split screen mode. Here is just the camera. Here's just the projector. This is the phone camera I was using. And you can set up different inputs to be used in those, different audio and video inputs. To show you for setting up the PTZ camera inside of the system, let me actually go back to this view. So here's the PTZ camera. That's actually being brought in as what's called a VLC source because it's using an RTSP stream, which is a pretty common video streaming protocol over Internet Protocol. It doesn't just see it on OBS Studio like you'd plug a webcam in, but you can just use webcams, and that would be another way if you don't want to use an IP camera. Those actually do have less processing and signal delay. But to use something like an IP camera like this, it's using a VLC video source. You have to have VLC installed on the computer as well. But then you add a URL. So this is just adding a path or a URL to it. And this is the syntax for this kind of specific camera and how it sets up. So it's got admin password 1. That's just the default. We'll be changing those as we deploy them. But the password, username and password for the camera itself. And then setting the address that the camera is. So this is just what we have set inside our environment. Static IP set for those. The network caching equals 200, that's an option, but I think you can also do that through this here. It'll do the same thing. One thing I've used these cameras for different types of uses that we found is that turning it to visibility behavior, always display even when not visible, helps with dropouts if you go away from the camera and come back to the camera. But then the other settings or the other different The other scenes you can set up, you can just set up different inputs for those scenes, reuse inputs across scenes. Something like this split screen one, I've got the video cropped down, so it's a narrower thing to allow for room for the projected image as well. But you can move those around and change the sizes of those. You can have them overlay or underlay depending on the order that they're placed inside the sources value or sources window there. Another feature that is useful with OBS, I'm going to switch to Studio, or turn on Studio mode and make this smaller. There is a plugin that can be used. So underneath Tools, I've added a plugin called Virtual Cam. And that allows you to create the output of the OBS Studio as just what will appear as a webcam on the computer. So when using something like a web streaming or a web software like Zoom or Google Hangouts, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, any of those would work. What you're able to do then is inside that software is the OBS Studio output will show up as a display source or as a camera source. So I can go into here into Zoom, and OBS Camera is now the source that I'm using as my camera. And it's getting the output from OBS Studio, both the audio and the video, and that's what's being sent out as my audio, or excuse me, as my camera. And that will work for any streaming software that's looking for a webcam or any medium software. There is some overhead to what the computer is doing here with OBS Studio. Right now, I am sort of pushing the computers we have that we've added in, but I'm running quite a few things all at one time. It's kind of been hovering between 40 and 70% CPU load on the computer here. They are Dell Optiplex 3060 micros that we just purchased this year. They only have i3 processors in them, but they have 8 gigabytes of RAM. So, you know, they're not super powerful computers. They're still able to run what I'm doing here. You definitely, though, are asking the computer to do more work with these different components, so something to keep in mind. It will also greatly vary based on what you're asking the OBS Studio to do, what output quality you're getting the video at. So the higher the resolution of the output quality, the more work the computer has to do to transcode all those frames. I'm recording right now, so that's obviously adding more load to it as well because it's transcoding that. If it's just doing the virtual camera to do a web stream, it's not going to be necessarily as much, but then you can, again, choose what kind of resolution you want to send out on that. So those are definitely things to test and consider if you're going to go with a solution like this. So that's pretty much the setup. We're hopeful it's going to work well. For us, the goal is going to be not necessarily to have all of these features that every teacher is going to use because it'll be overwhelming for many teachers, but hopefully set up different levels of complexity, just even a basic setup that's going to allow them to switch between, say, the screen and the camera, so they can easily do that during the course of a class period. But then those who want to do more, we can show them more features, be able to set different views for the camera, different presets that they could switch between, have picture-in-picture, that kind of thing. So we're going to see how well it's going to work, but hopefully this is going to allow for students who are learning virtually to be able to log in and be part of the class to a certain extent, where they can see what's happening and interact with the teacher live during the classes. So that's it.